Hello and welcome to the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and I'm speaking today with Trey Wasser, CEO and Director of Dryden Gold Corp, traded on the TSX.V under the ticker DRY, and on the OTC markets under the ticker DRYGF. And Dryden Gold is operating in Northwestern Ontario. It's an exploration company looking for gold and other minerals, and it really is operating the Dryden Gold District, comprised of three main project areas: the Gold Rock Camp, the Tremblay Formation, and the Lower Manitou, and it all ties together into this Dryden Gold District. Trey, it's great having you on the show to introduce this company. Walk us through how the company came together, how the project came together, and why your team is interested in exploring in this area of Ontario.
All right, yeah, thanks, Shad. Look, we started this company privately about 2 years ago and got some funding from some of the people of the success at the Ely Gold Royalties. And the idea was to consolidate a large land package in a very underexplored district, which has great infrastructure. It's got a lot of mining talent and mining history, and yet has never, the properties and claims have always been so fragmented that it's never seen a really district-wide approach to the exploration. And so, I mean, when I talk about infrastructure, Shad, it's the Trans-Canada Highway literally runs through the property. We've got highways and can drive right to where we're doing all our drilling, so there's no helicopter support, power, and it's just an amazing place that has just not seen a lot of modern exploration.
Well, and we'll put a project map underneath this interview so people can get a visual on it. But some people will know some of the companies operating around you, like Kenorland and Treasury Metals. And what I think is interesting is that this whole area, it has a lot of parallels to the Timmins camp and the Red Lake camps, which a lot of investors will recognize. Maybe share some of that side, the geology and how it relates to Red Lake and Timmins.
Yep, our property was where, we put the properties together, consolidate a package that is very strategic. It runs along a main deformation zone called the Manitou to Norwick, and that runs through our entire property. And the similarities, that has been the deformation zone has been compared to the Porcupine Fault in the Timmins camp by a Metal Earth and some other people writing papers. And then the Red Lake, there's a really high correlation between the regional folding. Red Lake also had a main structure that ran through it with these cross-cutting structures and this regional folding. And so very similar there. And we were very lucky last year to have been able to hire Maura Kolb, who's our president. She spent 9 years at Gold Corp, and about 5 of those, she ran the exploration program for the late years when Gold Corp owned, at the replacing reserves and getting finding costs down at Red Lake. So, when we talk about these similarities to Red Lake, it's not just us drawing pictures and stuff. Maura has firsthand experience there, and that's why she came on board.
Well, and let's talk about some of the prior work that was done by prior operators. At one point, this was held by Gold Corp, then it went to Manitou. You guys picked it up from Manitou, and there has been some historic drilling done and historic exploration. Walk us through the history of exploration on this project.
Yeah, I mean, it dates back to the turn of the century when there was historic mining there. In fact, when they first found this, started mining here, it was called the New Klondike, and it was really earlier, a little bit earlier than the first mining done up at Red Lake, partially because this was more accessible and more of it is on high ground. But you're right, the property was held by Gold Corp for many years. There's no history of them ever doing a bit of work on it. And in fact, Rob McEwen was, one of the reasons he got involved is he always liked the property and was a little disturbed that Gold Corp sold it without ever doing any work on it. There was some historic work done by Teck back in the 80s and 90s. St. Joe Minerals was in there a little bit. So a little bit of work done there, but most of the work was done when Manitou Gold, a small junior, bought the company in 2008 from Gold Corp. And they started in a drilling campaign, and ultimately in 2011, 2012, they really struck gold there with an intercept of 53,000 grams per ton over half a meter. And that's in a was still 3,497 grams over 8.5 meters. So they spent most of their time then drilling right around that intercept and kind of proved up a very nice high grade shoot. And that's the key at Red Lake, and that'll be the key here in the Gold Rock camp. We think is that finding these high grade shoots and the high grade gold occurrences, and they'll happen at different points where these cross cutting structures and the fold hinges make gold traps. And the key here, we already know we have one very nice high grade shoot. And they did enough drilling actually there to probably put an inferred resource together. But now what we're doing is expanding that footprint and looking for more of these high grade shoots. And so far in our first 3,000 meters of drilling, Maura and our VP of Exploration, Anna Hicken, who also worked at Red Lake for Maura, have found 3 additional high grade shoots that we're now following up on and testing. So we've expanded, basically from one high grade shoot over a couple hundred meters to we've drilled out the system to now over 3 kilometers on 3 separate vein systems. So it's getting very exciting.
Well, and let's dive into a little bit more about what your team is doing. Like you say, you've 3,000-meter program, but you've really divided this into 3 different areas: the Gold Rock Camp, the Lower Manitou, and the Tremblay. It seems like the focus for now is on the Gold Rock Camp side of things. Walk us through what other work the team would like to do there, and if there's any other work on the other 2 areas for this year.
Okay, yeah, the Gold Rock Camp is about a 20 kilometers of strike along this Manitou to Norwich deformation zone. It also is the site of almost all of the historic mining in the major mining in the district. 7 kilometers of strike in the Gold Rock Camp are on patented claims. So that's where we've been focusing because, of course, on the patented claims, we don't have to get permits. So that's what's allowed us to, start a drill program right away. So the known high-grade zone drilled by Manitou that I mentioned earlier, that's at the northern end of these patented claims. So, we've got several kilometers more to extend to the south. And then we picked up some ground from Cross River Ventures, which is at the southern end of the patented claims. And that came with a drill permit. So this summer now that we've expanded this footprint and we've got some more drill results at the lab right now for a 1.5 kilometer step out on the Elora vein system, and a follow-up on one of those new high-grade shoots that was identified in the first phases of drilling, where we've drilled our deepest hole to date. So we'll have those coming in, and then we have budget for one more phase of drilling, which will be kind of determined by once they've seen all the results, and then a budget for a summer program field work out down on the Cross River ground to determine some targets down there. And another area that we sampled last year, we call Hinman. It is off the main trend, but very interesting. It's literally the highway, the Trans-Canada Highway runs right through that property. And, it's really been opened up and we had some great ground samples there. So we're hoping to go get in there and do some trenching and sample that a bit more.
All right, Trey. Well, when some of those assay results come back in that you're waiting on, let's get you back on the show and we'll unpack them together and dive a little bit deeper into the exploration the company's working on at that time. But right now, I think it'd be great just to highlight, you've already mentioned a few people on the team, but just highlight not just the team, but also there's an impressive board of directors behind the company. Who is the team behind Dryden Gold, and also your background, Trey?
Well, starting with me, I mean, my background was, we started, kind of pivoted Ely Gold, a company called Ely Gold and Minerals that in 2016 and pivoted it to the royalty model and one of the first, new junior royalty companies. And when we pivoted there, we had about 6 million in cash, and that was about our market cap, was the 6 million market cap. And we ended up building that up with royalties. And some of it was through the kind of the EMX model of generating properties and retaining royalties, also buying royalties. We sold that in 2021 to Gold Royalty Corp for 300 million. So that was my background. I really looked at retirement, moved to a house on the golf course, and really wasn't planning on getting back into mining until this project came along. And this project was brought to me by Jason Jessup, who's one of our directors. He runs a company called Magna Mining, and he had done some pilot mining on the project for Manitou Gold. So he knew the property very well. And he said, if you can put a deal together and consolidate this package, it could be something very, very big. And then a good friend who we'd actually done some royalty business with, Darren Wagner from Balmoral. And when I mentioned the property to him, he got very excited. He knew the property, he had seen it. He was actually going to option the Tremblay ground in Balmoral prior to the sale to Walbridge. So he got excited enough to come on board as a strategic advisor and investor. And then we added Christina McCarthy, who just sold her company Paycor to I-80 Gold and sits on I-80's board now. So we've really got a strong team of not just good geologists, and Maura and Anna with their incredible background at Red Lake and with these orogenic Archean gold systems, but a board made up of people who are have a history of creating shareholder value and navigating M&A. And I mean, let's face it, a junior mining company, 95% of the time, the exit strategy is to be purchased by a larger company, and so that M&A experience and history is very important.
Yeah, it absolutely is, Trey. And this kind of brings up the next point that when you picked up this project, you already have a large mining company as a strategic shareholder, but you also have an impressive roster of other strategic shareholders in the company. So I'd love you to unpack the relationship you have with Alamos Gold. That's who I was alluding to there. But also, after that, share some of the other key stakeholders in the company.
Sure. Yeah, Alamos actually acquired Manitou Gold, optioned the property from in 2022. And so they got their share position through a takeover of Manitou Gold. And then we had milestone payments now to Alamos, which we made one late last year. Well, actually, the first of this year for last year's payment. And they received some more shares. And now we have a milestone payment coming up next month, which will give them even a larger position. So they should be about a 14-15% shareholder. And Alamos is very supportive, but I can tell you, other than Alamos, Kinross is active in the camp, and literally all the operators that are producers in Canada have already Dryden Gold on their radar. So we're talking to other potential strategic partners in addition to Alamos. And I think I mentioned that Rob McEwen came on board and knew the property well. Adrian Day with the Europac Gold Fund, Peter Schiff's fund, which he manages, and also a lot of his private clients came on board. And then we also have a roster of brokers and bankers and analysts from literally 5 or 6 different investment firms. So it's been a very good story in what's been a tough market, going all the way back here to Beaver Creek. We were able to raise money privately when no one else could. So this is a story that's resonated with some very sophisticated investors.
Yeah, Trey, I appreciate breaking that down for us, because in addition to Alamos having Eric Sprott and Rob McEwen and Adrian Day, and there with Peter Schiff's fund and all the institutional investors, it's a nice roster. And to your point, being able to raise money in such a tough capital market is saying something. Let's maybe talk about that real quick. What kind of cash does the company have in the treasury? And could you also break down, I know that there's some warrants out there that expire next year. Could that bring in some extra capital? Just break down the financial side of the business for us.
Yeah, currently have about 2.7 million in cash. We raised 5 million on the RTO, and part of that went to making a milestone payment to Alamos. But we pretty much have all of our payables on the current exploration program. The drillers, everybody are paid up, with the exception of probably a small balance due to the assay lab. But so we're pretty current there with that cash balance. And while we do have, when we issued the stock at the RTO, we did that with a full warrant. So we have about 40 million warrants that are due in 2 years at 30 cents. So with the stock now trading, we're trading a little bit below, I think. So we're really not looking at those warrants. Hopefully we'll see the stock up and those warrants exercised, but I think we will probably be looking at maybe doing some more flow through financing or something to continue with the exploration program into this fall and next year. I mean, another great thing about this property is we were drilling in from November through February, and they don't get a lot of snow there. The access is so good that it really is an area that has year-round exploration potential.
And that's an exciting part because there's so many companies in Canada on pause in the winter months. So it's nice that the seasonality doesn't affect Dryden Gold the same way it does, let's say, somebody in the Golden Triangle, something like that. So definitely another plus for Dryden Gold. I guess, Trey, just as we wrap up, you've mentioned that you have some more exploration work on tap, and you do have the funding right now to go ahead and do those summer campaigns. So what other key news is coming down the pipeline that you want people to watch out for, other key targets you're going to be working on, and then anything else you want investors to know about Dryden Gold?
Well, I think our next set of assay results, which will probably be coming out maybe like late next month, that was just finished up and went into the assay lab. That was another large step out to the south, about 1.5 kilometers on the Lower vein system. And I think I mentioned our deepest hole to date on one of these new high-grade shoots. So, one thing about these systems is that they do tend to, throughout Canada and in Northwest Ontario, whether you're looking at Red Lake or Timmins or any of these camps, these systems tend to be very deep and get better at depth. However, they are difficult to drill from surface because the structures literally, almost stand straight up. So they're almost vertical. So, you're kind of restricted in how deep you can get on a vertical system like that, a vertical shoot, in, how far you can step out. And so you're stepping out and drilling awfully long holes to get down deeper. And then even then you're restricted by, the maximum angle that the drill can operate. So, we're excited. We got down, we'll be down, I think, about 300 meters on this new high grade shoot. And that could be very important because really, even the existing high grade shoots have only been drilled to maybe at the most 200 meters. So we're excited about that. And then a follow-up drill program after that, which will probably be coming out results in the summer, and like I mentioned, a summer field program which will line up our targets and our work for next year.
All right. Well, we'll keep following along with the story here at the KE Report. Appreciate you coming on the show, Trey, to introduce Dryden Gold. When you get those drill assays back, let's get you back on and we'll unpack them together. And for those that are interested in following along with the news on Dryden Gold, definitely click on the link below this interview. It takes you over to the company website, to their news section. And Trey, looking forward to our next conversation.
All right, great. Thanks, Shad. Thanks for having me.